All right, I guess we'll get started. We'll officially call our meeting to order at 1:02. We're good. Hello. I'll tell Sam we've memorialized his seat like nobody's business.
Sam was going to be here.
I think he's coming at 3, but I thought he was coming. I thought he said he was coming here too. It's just so funny because I'm like, that's so weird.
I'm gonna get a ball cap out of my car.
Exactly.
There you go.
His seat.
Exactly. Well, as Ms. Rice gets herself situated, which you can do that. For the good of the order, I am not sick, but I've just been without my voice since Wednesday. So this is the best it's sounded so far. I've had every test known to man, and I don't feel sick, but just so you all know. Okay, all right. So I will. So our first order of business is approving our minutes from March 13th.
There just needs to be a technical correction for the name of the Board of Ed chairperson. And with that, I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say so. Motion carries. Thank you. So the next order of business, which does not have anything attached to it, is our conversation. And we do have board members that aren't here, so I will follow with them and also allow them to kind of weigh in on the next steps of how we forecast our committee meetings. The chair and I have talked. We've talked to Dr. Robinson, and I will let him get situated just in case we have some questions for him. But we'll talk about some of the work that he has been doing with his team of going. And I think I mentioned this to you all before, that he has been attending. Sorry, letting you all get set up. So excuse me, they've been attending some of our city council, town council meetings, which has been really helpful. They've got really good feedback, and Dr. Robinson will give you some of that feedback about the most recent visit shortly. But we wanted to get your input. When the chair asked me about this committee, we both had lots of ideas. We talked to Dr. Taylor about them. And as I said at our first meeting, we also had the opportunity to remind ourselves that we had multiple committee engagement opportunities throughout our strategic plan. So this really is the only committee that belongs to the board. And again, a reminder that the board committee is literally us. There are not other people on our board committee, so we can invite people in to speak to us, but they don't actually sit on our committee. So I want to dispel any misunderstanding. But the committees that the staff will create on the strategic plan will include community members. So there's still the opportunity for community members to be a part of community engagement, but this is a board committee. And so given that it's a board committee, I want to give each of you the opportunity to give us your feedback on what you'd like to see. And I certainly want to share with you, the chair and I have considered quite a few options, and one of them is to actually move our board meetings once a quarter outside of Crossroads. So moving our actual board meeting to a municipality. We know that it'll be logistically tough, but Dr. Robinson and I are already thinking about if that's an option, what could that look like? But because this doesn't allow us to invite people to our committee, this allows us to actually go into community as a full board. It allows people who would not be able to drive to Cary by 6 o'clock to give us public comment. So that was our thinking. That's our best way to offer the community to actually engage with us as a board without sitting on a committee with board members. And so I'll let you add anything you want to add to that.
Well, thank you. This is something that we've heard about in the past, that previous boards have taken the show on the road, whether it was a bus tour to look at school sites during a bond campaign, or just even when we've had public hearings at some of the high schools. It's been great to see the number of people who are able to show up when the meetings are held close to where they live. You know, I can look around the board table and see people who I know have long commutes here, and if they know it's a long commute, I know it's a long commute for your neighbors as well. And just the idea that a few times a year we could get out from, outside of this building and have a meeting in a Garner, a Wake Forest, a Holly Springs, a Morrisville, wherever it might be, getting out to the county, out into the county close to where people live, I think would just be a great way to get more voices to the table and hear more from real people who are right there in their community. It just makes it a little bit easier, I think, to get that feedback.
So those are our thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts, both a response to us if you'd like to, but also what your hopes and thoughts were, given that this is not a committee that people can join.
Oh, and one more thought. We've had public hearings, scheduled outside of our board meetings. But as you know, we have board meetings, we have committee meetings, we have transfer appeals panels, we have due process hearings, and the difficulty in finding a common date in order to schedule something
Oh, that's a good point.
with everything else that we do could just be really, really challenging. But if we were to pick one of our regularly scheduled board meetings or work sessions, right, then we know it's already on the calendar and it's already on a day and a time that you would have had scheduled to attend. So it's not putting anything new, and it's not diminishing it by having sort of a quasi-meeting somewhere. It's a real meeting with real business being conducted, and hopefully that elevates the importance of it.
And that was the chair's idea, which I thought was good. When we were looking at the calendar, Ms. Allen was like, so where would you put an evening meeting? And I was like, that's a really great point. I don't know. There was really nowhere on the schedule. And so the chair thankfully had that great idea that let it be our board meetings, because we initially were like, it's not a community engagement meeting if it's at 1 o'clock. We're the only people here.
I like that idea.
Yeah. I mean, that time that we went to Southeast Raleigh, I thought it was a good experience.
was.
And for us to be there, but as well as for the community members to be able to have that opportunity to speak to us. And in fact, during those special meetings in different neighborhoods, we should probably have a time for the area, those the community members in that area to be kind of take a little even more of a priority in terms of the public comment.
Agreed. That's actually a great addition, is we could prioritize the people who live in that community on the public comment speaking schedule.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my head as I look at Lisa to remind us.
Check.
Other feedback?
I think it's a great idea, ditto to everything that was being said, and I think it would really help community engagement. I think there's a lot of people that are just not going to take that journey. Even if it's just being part of the conversation in the audience, they just hear, what other people in their community are talking about. I think it would be a great idea. And I do like incorporating it into some of the timeframes that we've already have selected.
Other feedback? Thoughts?
I just think whatever we do within our community and however we engage, just make sure that we put action behind what we're engaging about. I think residents want to be involved. I think they want meaningful roles. I think they want a healthy relationship with their school board, but I think they also want, and this is based off feedback to the community, they don't want us to just have meetings. They want us to be actionable about what they're talking about or what they're expressing, and not let it lay dormant 6 months or a year, but really show action behind the thought that we're being very thoughtful and having these meetings and very intentional about the meetings, which I think are really, really great. And they really, really appreciate having access to us and being able to share. They really do appreciate that. It's just that people want to see what we do after we meet.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. I mean, again, we've not done it in this way, but I would say that all of the things that Chris talked about that we've done in community had direct action and consequence. And the difference for this committee is what we hear in the community is direct feedback to the staff who will be leading community engagement. So this time we actually have a container and not, we don't have to figure out whose job it is, right? Like sometimes we hear things and we're like, okay, so board members have to decide who these things go to. This actually has a structural container, and I do think that that's not something we've had in the past. So I think you're right about that.
So Madam Chair, I'll just say to the board, I think this is going to be one of the best things that you do to help the community engage. We have talked about our need for transparency and our need to deal with any criticism that people bring to the board, but we recognize that that first step in opening that up is to be true to that purpose and know that that's a part of it, not run from it, and just continue to build those opportunities for them to engage with you as a board. So there's so much that we do individually as administration, and you do great jobs with your BAC. But I know the public is going to see this as a collective effort by the board to go beyond what you've done in the past and create even greater access. And so, there's a lot that we're going to learn. There are going to be some missteps that we
Absolutely.
make. But in the end, we just want the public to know that you all are serious about this, and I think it's going to pay great dividends. I really do.
I agree, and I think it allows us, to your point of, while our BACs are that, it still is not district-wide. And so our BACs have no reach outside of our districts, and I do believe that that's not how the larger community sees us. They see us as a district-wide board, and I think this allows us to show up in the way that people expect. And how most people assume what our jobs are, which is we're a district-wide board, just elected in individual districts. And so I think that allows us to showcase that we truly, all 9 of us, all districts and all municipalities are equally important to us, and that's how we can show up in that way. And the other, piece of that is we've also talked about, which I met with Dr. Robinson today, is we also want to still give the opportunity to many of our community organizations who reached out to Chris and I when we started this community, who said, we want to come talk to the board. So we still are going to build in spaces for our current community partners to be showcased, and you're going to hear a little bit more about the mapping that we've done today, but there are some key stakeholders that are huge partners of the district that we know little bits about what they do, but not fully. And so we are still going to build in the opportunity, so they may be informational items, but we're going to build them into our board meeting so that those community partners can come speak to us as well.
I was just thinking about, the time when we do have these meetings in the neighborhood, maybe the briefing of some sort in a community engagement committee that's following up on it, so that way we can all kind of reflect on what's been said.
What did we hear? What were the action items?
Right, and as a group, we can talk about what actions we can take.
Yep, that's a great idea. Trust me, Dr. Robinson and I had a million versions of how to work this out.
Yeah.
And he must have threw every protocol at the wall to me of how to do this. But we agree. And that's why we're asking you to give us feedback of what you'd like to see, because, I think I can speak for Dr. Robinson. We're still very open to what this can shape out to be in addition to go into community.
And
Because
it
we do
might
want
be
to hear what
shaped
you
by
want.
the community, right? Because they're going to now see us at work and
Yeah.
know what we're actually doing, and that conversation will actually determine the path that it takes.
That's right. And this is also, again, we still want to know kind of what your thoughts are, because we're still shaping this in addition to this. So if there are thoughts that don't fit into the strategic plan community engagement committee that you've thought about, we also want to hear those in this space as well.
Are we going to pick topics, or like how are we going to, what are we going to do when we go out to each? Because we have 9 different districts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to discuss, like, say, student assignment in an area that's not, you know what I'm saying? It's like, how are we going to work that?
That's,
Yeah. So I guess
Yep.
one of the ideas is that if we are doing these meetings during a regular board meeting, we'd have a regular board meeting agenda, right? So, like at today's, next week's board meeting, we'll talk about school lunches and lunch prices. And if we had that out in the community, that would be one of the topics. But we can be intentional, whereas if we know there is a subject coming up that's of particular interest to an area, that we try to schedule that meeting and that discussion around that time. You're right, if you had like a student assignment plan where a new school's coming online in Apex or
Why are you
Holly
looking at me?
Spring,
Because we're only building new schools there.
but you did the meeting out in Wake Forest,
Right.
well, then you're moving it probably as far away as you can from the people that have the most interest, and you really want to do the reverse and put it where it needs to be.
I would also say, and I'm going to, Dr. Robson, we didn't talk about where you would interject this, but I think this is the right place to interject the feedback that you got from Wake Forest, because I don't think we can make the assumptions of these things, because the question they asked him about was capping, which they have capping, but it is not vastly pervasive in Eastern. So there is also still, we cannot assume that our communities who aren't being impacted still don't want to fully understand the decision-making process that we're going through. So yes, I would not move, like, if we're voting on, if we're having a hearing, I wouldn't move it as far away from the people who are most impacted. But I still think that we can't make an assumption that all of our community members don't want to understand the nuances of our work. So Dr. Robson, if I can punt it to you to give your feedback.
Absolutely. So I will share some information. We had the opportunity to go out to Wake Forest and do a presentation about our strategic plan. And let me say it was very well received. It was very positive. Matter of fact, the mayor said this is the first time in all her years of being out there as the mayor that the school system has come out to share information with regards to what we're doing and how we're trying to impact the community, but most of all the kids. There were 3 things that they really wanted. And because I always ask, what are the 3 takeaways that we can take away with that you would ask us to do? The first thing is they want us to be able to schedule a school visit tour so they can get into their schools and see what's actually going on in the schools. As they talk about, and they talked about some of the charter schools up there and all the whispers that they're hearing, that they would love to get the opportunity to go into our buildings to see exactly the positive impacts that are being created in our schools. The second thing that they wanted to be able to talk with the district about capping of schools so that they can understand what that looks like, how it impacts them, and how can they provide support as well. And then the last thing they talked about is that we said we would have an offline conversation with them to help deepen their understanding of the process of what the district goes through when they open new schools. Because there were whispers about, do they need a new school within their district because of the amount of students that they have. We even talked about the number of students that are going to charter schools as the number of students that are going into public schools. One of the things that I shared is we couldn't engage in that conversation in that forum, but we said we would definitely come back and have a conversation about that as well. It was a great opportunity. This is something that we have to continue to do, and they're looking forward to our next meeting and follow-up.
Thank you, Dr. Robson. That has been kind of the feedback from all the municipalities you all have been to so far with the strategic plan. Ms. Smith?
Well, I was just thinking, as we get new council members for our municipal boards online, it's kind of this feeling of the school board is here, and I'm not proposing we do 12 different joint meetings with 12 different boards, but is there a kind of school board 101 that we could do?
So I had Dr. Taylor give it a trial run in Garner, because that's my municipality, because I had a new mayor and new members. So prior to early in my board career, we did 2 joint meetings with municipalities who were interested.
Okay.
But it is a lot of work because there are 12 of them. So we stopped doing those, and we started more so going to the ones who wanted it. And so I would say, and Dr. Taylor, you can speak to this, what they mostly want is they do not understand how we decide where schools are built, how we assign students, it is almost nearly 75% around schools. It doesn't matter if they're impacted, it's the grave concern of every community member who has a child. And so I think consistently, they had very detailed questions. They wanted to know, what's our formula? Do we use a they literally had a lot of details. So I think they're all going to be different, but they all want the same information. So my trial run was to send Dr. Taylor, and we also scheduled a separate meeting for Mr. Carozza, who did go meet with them, and they sent back kudos. So that was our trial run to see if because technically we can't answer the level of details that they're asking in a lot of cases anyway. It's always my recommendation, which I think this board has done a good job of knowing your municipal leaders. That's the first thing I would say we still have to do for the municipalities that we represent. And I'm open to ideas, but that was like my trial run. Also, Dr. Taylor's new, it gave him an opportunity to meet and be in a different community other than sitting in Cary. And then they were actually able to ask Mr. Frozen, who actually does have all the details, all the answers that they wanted. That was a separate meeting.
So I know we have our legislative agenda that's primarily for our legislators, but is there an opportunity for us to create one for municipalities so they can understand what does reassignment look like? What does, a very high level overview. So therefore, when these big shifts are coming in their communities, they can refer back to that document to give them some insights. Not saying that they're going to be the school board experts, but at least they're getting the right information out to their constituents to make that path a little bit easier for us. So that's just a thought that we
Yeah.
could.
I don't know if I would call it legislative agenda. I don't know if Lisa remembers this because I've been on board way too long. Do you remember we created little vignettes to explain who we were? Like we did one on student assignment. Trust me, we've tried a whole lot since I've been on this board. So I don't know that we've tried a written document. The videos went over very well because people could just click on them when they had a question. So a document would be a great addition. I think that might be the only thing we've never done as a document because people don't know where they are. But we did do like little video vignettes.
Student Assignment is actually working on redoing that, and we're right in the middle of that planning process. So we can, if you want, we can take this back and look to see what options we have in order to be able to serve both audiences,
That's a great
families,
idea.
and municipalities.
That works. I mean, Lawrenceville has it on their website. If you need to contact their school board member, they have Chris and I's information on there as a way of getting it out to their constituents, because oftentimes folks are going to go to their,
Them anyway.
right, so
That's also a great idea.
if there's a way that we can get that information to them on the front end, it could help us in the long run.
Yep.
With a lot of clearing up
I
a lot
like
of
that.
this information.
That's a good idea.
And it also might help because some of us have like joining lines, like Wing and I are up in Wing Forest, and the Shoot with the Spice and I, we share the down there. So there could be like community things that we can do that doesn't have to be so formal. So I know we're trying to meet with like the town of Wing Forest right now to actually like just sit down and say, here's a 101, and trying to coordinate just those 5 people together is just a pretty big deal. So it just keeps the door open, and I like the idea of having.
Well, I'm going to caution you of a quorum of any of their boards because then it is a public meeting.
Yes, we are away.
So that's why I tried this different alternative that doesn't require.
Right, but I mean, it doesn't have to be such a formal setup, just for us to have open communication and say, hey, look, here's some of the things that are going on with us, give them some updates, and then they give us some updates. It just kind of opens up the partnership doors. But I like the idea of having almost like, like we have that placemat that sits in front of us, and it just kind of gives you like the overall information of what can be shared, and having like, here's your board member, here's your town commissioner, so all that information is always available, and the person who's looking for it just kind of knows, here's my go-to. So I like that idea of doing that.
I'll also say that Mr. Swanson worked with, was it Senator Adcock and Commissioner Stallings to do like a town hall, which he kindly invited me to, and Dr. Taylor as well. And that was really nice to just, I was at a student assignment hearing before the Q&A, but it was really nice to hear from people and hear what their concerns were and be able to answer their questions from different levels of government. So I don't mean to volunteer you, but that was a great template that we've not done before.
We have a couple more scheduled for the rest of the year, but it's just a way because oftentimes they reach out to their county commissioners or their school board members, but not also including that the bulk of their concerns falls at the state legislature. So that could be a model that we could try.
It is also
And they may
one
not
we've
know
used
where to
before.
go.
We actually include the sheriffs and the DAs for school resource issues. And we actually did it in Spanish before.
And what I would say is that,
That's, go ahead.
and I think you hit it best, that no matter who we engage with, whether it's municipality or commissioners, they have so many questions about the work that we do. And so I think what would be good is developing whatever that approach is to deal with. If it's municipalities, then we can go in and provide specific information around questions with schools, or if it's whatever group it is. That is where I think we can take a huge advantage to be able to have that engagement answer those questions that we know they're looking for. And it was the same thing when I went with the town of Garner when we were in, was it Apex?
For your town council.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so think about the level of questions that they ask. So many people do not understand schoolwork, but they so desperately want to know. And so if it's having a reader that has some information that you talked about, or engaging when they do have an opportunity to ask specific questions and having the right staff members there, I think that's where we're going to be able to really get people to understand what the work looks like and get behind it when it's something that's difficult. And so we know how municipalities are. They have their things about how I grow my town. But when it comes to schools, we want them to understand there's a specific way that we deal with that, and they've got to be on board with that. And if they understand that, it can help them look at things differently, particularly when we talk about needing more revenue.
That's right.
When we have those conversations, if we can answer those questions in the public and help them to recognize if this is what you want for your school system, this is what it's going to take, because we have a limited amount of resources. We're going to do what we have with the resources we have, but if there are unanswered questions or questions they don't know, once we give them information, it completely changes how people view it. So I think we see all of these opportunities to be able to do that, and we just take advantage of them.
And I don't want to lose your question, Cheryl. So regarding topics, as you have topics that you want us to discuss, there's several places. Like today, we have volunteer, because that was a large question. So so we're gonna have Ms. Hill here today to talk about our volunteer process. So we're not losing sight of the questions that board members have brought to us. So if there are other questions, then let us know. I guess what I'm saying to you is, we're all elected. You can do all the elected things in your districts that you'd like. I'm trying to narrow down what do we need from staff, because their job cannot be with us everywhere we want them to be in our communities. And so, yes, we can do all the elected things, and I want us to be able to fully engage the staff so that they know what our expectations are of them and what staff that includes that we need to engage. So those are the things that I'd like for you to kind of narrow down, is if you have topics that you haven't shared with me and the chair, then please share those and we'll bring those. And then also, it's helpful for us to know, because we'll be able to determine and talk to Dr. Taylor about what staff needs to be engaged. Because I'm not going to give carte blanche to the staff to be at every event that we want to host in our local communities. So those are the things that I think we will make pertinent to our community engagement when we need multiple staff to be engaged. Anything that rises to the top for you all that you definitely already had in your head that you wanted to talk about?
Just
yes.
a last thought. We're talking about the municipality leadership. When we are going to have a meeting in their community, it could be an open invitation for them to come and sit in or listen in, remotely, whatever, so that they can hear also their community.
That's a great idea. We can remind them. We're going to be in your community.
Yeah, they can listen to their community, talk about education issues.
I like that.
Yeah, just following up on that, we need to get confirmation on it, but if it's a meeting of our board and we're the ones presenting, even if a majority of the municipal officers are present, I think it would qualify as a meeting of their board if they're not actively involved in discussion or debate, right? It's just trying to figure out where those lines are for how many can be there, without running afoul of any open meeting or notice requirements.
Put them in different corners of the room.
What's like the events where they serve meals?
Yeah, I
right?
was just about to
Yeah.
say, if only corners of the room works in this public.
Yeah.
But yes, but no, that's actually a really good point. Because again, back to Ms. Caulfield, that's, we don't want to cause any other group of government officials to be in violation of open meeting law. So, but I also think it's a great thing we should be doing as board members. So if it's hosted in our district, then I think it's a great idea for the board member to extend the invitation to say, if you haven't noticed, we're in your community today. We'd love to see you, or you can also join us online. Because for those, if they're members that some of us may not have relationships with in our municipalities, it's a great way to start the dialogue as well, is to personally give them a little invite. This is not our last opportunity to continue to shape this. I certainly am happy at the way that this is shaping up, that we're able to meet a multitude of ways to engage our public, including our elected officials. And so thank you all for the work that you're doing in your municipalities that you represent, and continue to share that with us so that we can make sure that we're highlighting those things here, but also making sure that as Dr. Robson and his team are going to continue to talk about the strategic plan, that he's aware of any things that you need him to know what's happening in your area. Well, again, we will stop the conversation here, but it is not closed here.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Chavis.
Good afternoon.
You really are my neighbor.
I really am, yeah. Yes. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we are here, both myself and Board Member Rice, to talk about recent work that happened in the District 4, District 5, District 5 more so of the whole Wake County scheme outside of the public school system, the District 4 community work. So I want to yield to Board Member Rice to provide some context, and then I'll talk about some of what emerged from this forum.
Thank you, Dr. Chavis. So this forum was birthed out of the fact, of course, I'm a new board member, but in order to best serve that particular district, you needed to know what the district felt, or what citizens felt within that, so that I could bring constructive information to the board and properly advocate for the district. And I wanted good collaboration and context, which is why I partnered with Commissioner Waters, so that we could explore what were the barriers in education and economic progress. Of course, hers being Wake County in reference to the economic piece, and me as the school board member understanding what were these barriers. And so I took it from the lens of me being outside of the bubble, right? I'm in my own bubble. I may not have housing challenges. I may not have other challenges that my district may have. And so I did not want to assume that I knew what were the challenges of my district. So what better people to ask than the district itself? What are your challenges? What are your barriers? We understand in a larger scale that we're in some difficult economic times. We want to see increase in education, and this particular district typically has, when we disaggregate some of the data, primarily within District 4, that we may see some disparities. And so we took to the community. I called Dr. Chavis and said, Dr. Chavis, I need to know how best to leverage our community to do what is most equitable for them, right? I think we have a lot of great resources in Wake County. I love showcasing our resources that we have in Wake County. But how do we leverage those resources, right? So that it reaches the people for what they need, so that they can best do what Dr. Taylor says, level up, right? So that we can really grow where we really want to grow as a whole, as a district. And so what I did was propose that question of how do we eliminate these barriers in education and economic progress. And then Dr. Chavis came in and did what only Dr. Chavis can do, which was facilitate that forum for us. We called the experts in to do what experts do best, to facilitate that conversation. And he did an outstanding job. We had, within just a 2-week advertisement, so imagine if we did a little bit more time, we had about 60 participants that advertised, even down to our very own Wake County Human Services Director that came and was excited to participate in it. We had a lot of other great community people that were there who were actually decision makers that were in the room. But the greatest persons that were in the room for me were students that were high school students that was into the conversation. And recently when I had to go visit, they saw me and said, when are we going to do another conversation? I really like that. And so it continues to share that student voices matter. We saw that last Tuesday we were here, and students really want to be a part of the conversation. But I'll let Dr. Chavis take it from there with the great work that he and his team did with the constituents there.
Thank you, Board Member Rice. To add additional context there, so OEA, Office of Equity Affairs, was there to give and provide data as well as a strategic plan for the community members there. We also had Dr. Tori Staton from the Raleigh Chamber there to talk and provide context and economic data as well. I have to give kudos to my colleague, Dr. Brooksy Sturdivant, who also helped to co-create the agenda for that day and facilitate sessions alongside myself and Board Member Rice. When Board Member Rice came to us to talk about like what this could be and how we could create this forum, she talked about how do we impact academic outcomes in District 4, and so that led me to think about our equity policy. When we talk about equity being both a noun and a verb, both an action and an outcome, it was important that we started there and to think about how we think about the policy itself, the definition, thinking about barriers that are in the way of success of not only our students but their families as well. Also think it's important that disparities in this space wasn't just academic disparities as mentioned earlier. We were also talking about economic disparities and also health disparities, right? And how this will become a 4-part series, first being April 20th or 12th that took place. We also had in that space, in addition to students, we had advocates and the area superintendent for District 4, Dr. Elena Ashburn, was also there in participation. So it's important for us as we talk through this, how this work truly aligns and intersects with the work that we have that's in front of us, that leads us in the direction in which our district is going. And every time I'm in front of you, I'm going to always bring back our own board policy that speaks to equity and what we believe as a district and what our commitment is, how this is our Northern Star, and how we commit to this work. Specifically for this, we're looking at Commitment 9, how we create effective partnerships across the communities that we serve as well as the families that we serve. And then one of our 10 equity-focused practices, partnering equitably with families and caregivers, respecting their expertise and knowing what's best with their children, but also being in partnership with the school district in order to do so. So that's where the intersection alignment to our priorities exists for this particular forum. So we didn't want to go outside of the strategic plan. I know all of our work needs to align to that. But as opposed to us presenting the strategic plan in the way that we kind of do in the educational space, we wanted to make this more palatable for community members so that we can dive deeper and for them to have some relevance to the work and what that looks like for the life of the strategic plan by the end of 2028. And although we could have done multiple priorities for this session, we centered on priority 2 only. So again, we showed existing data that exists within priority 2, student dispositions and well-being, and then had them have an opportunity to have discussions at their respective tables, ask questions, and go through a protocol, which allowed, again, for them to think about priority 2 of our strategic plan. We also felt like this would be the focus area. This would probably be the area that we had the most excitement and energy around bringing folks into this space and to bring them back for the other 3 sessions. So again, we looked at Goal 4 and Goal 5 and presented data to our participants. In the learning environment, we typically look at the ISO model, so instruction, curriculum, environment, and the learner, and thinking about what impacts the learner through the instruction, curriculum, environment. And so we wanted to take a very similar approach but not use the educational jargon. It's very important that as we're asking folks to be in partnership to think about issues and problems that are in their way of accessing, and how they can help to seek solutions alongside us, that we do this in such a manner that allows them to provide their voice and for us to not speak the educational jargon. So we ask inside of the ISO model for us to do and look through the lens of students, families, the community itself, and then schools, how schools can best support our young people and the families. So in the protocol that you'll see on the next slide, we're using the right-hand slide of this graphic here, again, thinking it through the terms of these different partner groups. And then because our families are closest to schools, how the school can be an active agent in supporting our young people. So this is a template that we use. We did a KWL, very, again, similar to what we do in the educational space, but we wanted to evaluate and assess right then and there with the folks that joined us that day, what did they already know in respects to Goal 4 and Priority 2 of our strategic plan, what might be their wonderings, and then what might they like to see as a future state as it relates, again, District 4 and what's happening in that specific area. Some of what they identified as things that they knew, the barriers that exist that impact the progress in the area and what's blocking success. They noted known transportation issues, the need for extracurricular support and activities that connects and helps there to be a supportive network for their students and also the communities that serve those students, and then ultimately safety concerns. And so the rest of this, I'm just going to highlight areas of where those participants, where their wonderings were, and then what they would like to see as it relates to eliminating barriers for success. So as we think about what their wonders were, adaptation and evolution came about, and we kind of classified those in that particular category. How are we addressing absenteeism? What does that look like? What supports are in place? Mental health supports, student support services. What might be the underlying factors as to students attending school, not attending school, their well-being? What are some underlying factors that we might need to tease out and examine more and examine into levels of depth? And then the notion of early intervention. What does that look like? How do we intervene much earlier than to wait and be reactive once something has happened and now we have to pull resources? How might we be doing that along the way? And this notion of accountability came up. As we start to think about the well-being of our students, the metrics that we have, how might we start to think about what accountability looks like when we know students' needs are not being met? Then the notion of student well-being, a lot of information and a lot of feedback came about what does life look like post-COVID, post-traumatic experiences, particularly that happened in the Southeast Raleigh area. What does that support for the well-being of students? What might that look like? And schooling the whole child. That came up multiple times in different sections. To know the identities of the students, what they bring to schools each day, the experiences that they have in and out of school, and how those out-of-school experiences will impact their academic progress within the school setting. Then the question was asked, what would they like to see, that last column of the KWL chart, if you will. And that was categorized into two different categories here: shift in perspective and approach, and improving systems and supports. So as we unpack shifting in perspective and approach a bit more, this notion of how do we individualize support? What does personalized support look like for students? The communication between the schools, the community, as well as families. One of the important things that I think I carried with me to my team, and that's also aligned in our equity policy, is this notion of how do we engage families so that they are helping us to confront the inequities that exist in our schools and within the community. So not just how do we engage how do we involve, and what does outreach look like, but how do we actively involve folks that are closest to a concern or issue within the confines of their community and school? How do we use and how do we engage them to confront those inequities that we know exist? Reconsideration of this notion of perfect attendance, and that we might want to look at a different model now, especially with all the things that we've learned in the last 4 years. How might we look at different ways by which we value students' participation and engagement and attendance in school when it's not meeting and attending all 180 days of school? Family and community engagement and involvement, again, this notion of partnership. How do we go beyond just an event? How do we go beyond inviting people into the schoolhouse? How does that look? And how do we do outreach within the communities that students and their families live in? The moving towards a holistic approach. I like this quote that was mentioned a few times: whole family, whole person. Right? That we're not just looking at the child and providing, while that's important, the holistic approach and looking at the whole child, but how do we look at the whole family as well and the whole person that comes to us each and every day? And then finally, collaboration and partnership, this triangulated process of having the school, the families and communities involved alongside organizations that can support our young people as well. And then finally, the second part of what community members would like to see in District 4, you'll see highlighted 4 areas here. I'll only highlight 2. Root cause analysis, I thought that was awesome that came up and was spoken multiple times by multiple people in different groups. Even our young people mentioned this. How we really need to take a deeper look and look at what has caused us to be in the space and the outcomes that we currently have in our district. What might we need to do different, and how do we take an approach that leads us into prevention as opposed to reaction? So how might we look at root causes, systemic root causes, historic root causes, and take action towards that? And we can never get away from the power of strong relationships. I mean, we say it all the time. We know that that is what really moves our young people into areas of different outcomes or heightened outcomes, if you will. So what do strong relationships look like from the board table to individual schools, from those of us that serve as staff at the district level, and then community partnership? So having strong relationships, and through those strong relationships, how do we address disparities, and how do we address all the things that we see contained in our equity policy? So it was very important to be in this space. And again, I think the community members that were involved got a lot from this opportunity. We're looking forward to the next 3 sessions that we'll do, and in partnership again with the Raleigh Chamber. So I'll stop there to see if you have any questions for myself or Board Member Rice.
Dr. Raymond.
Thank you. I really like the idea of prevention because a lot of times when I'm dealing with people in my work in the hospital, we're dealing with a family in crisis for whatever situation, and there are resources out there to tap into once the crisis has happened. But it's good that the community can also tap into resources before the crisis happens. So I really like that aspect of it. Thank you.
Just a commercial. I know next Dr. Sturdivant's coming up to talk about community resources, so I think that's a good segue between the work that was being done for this forum and what's to come.
I do want to say that it was a very empowering night. I was extremely pleased at participation, just engagement. Like communities were very excited to be able to be a part of it. One thing I do want to say, two takeaways I just want to share really quickly. One, because of this forum, and remember, we just partnered with DHHS and the things that we're doing right with the school board. And that was one of the things that our director said. They were so excited to actually have access to other educators that were there, that actually work in the system, And so they're trying to create an environment where there is dignity and value around families that need access to their services but can't get there. They're looking at bringing the services in, but in a very discreet manner at an event that might be happening at the school and things like that to preserve people's dignity, but yet get the resources that they need without having to try to figure out multiple ways to do things and to get forms in. So that was something that was very great that came out of that and connection. And then the last part is that on May 5th, I sent out the follow-up email that collected a little bit more data from us around demographics, like who was in the room, what zip code you actually were, so to make sure it may not have just, and we found some people that just wasn't the zip code of District 4 that wanted to come and participate. And the thing that we left Commissioner Waters and then left them with an assignment, not a hard assignment, right, before we come back, but there was a task that they had to do, and that was they had to contact at least one elected official and share a concern that they have, right? And we provided a link for them for the local, state, and federal levels to reach their person, how to look up, and how to reach out to share their concern. Because we can't, we wanted them to feel empowered, to know that they have a voice, and you just need to be able to tell people what your concerns are. And so they were able to choose that, and hopefully they have until we meet in June, which I have a scheduled date of June 20th, and we'll confirm. And that was it. And so when I pulled the data after everyone fills out there's a link and a form. There's a question on that survey. There's a question within the email of a form that we asked them collecting the other demographic data that just says, what was your takeaway and what do you actually want to see happen? So we continue to collect data to continue to make sure we're moving in the right direction that matters to its residents and not just ourselves. But thank you, Dr. James. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Dr. Stewart.
Afternoon, everyone. As you know, I'm Dr. Brooks Sturdivant. I'll be sharing an update primarily on the Community Partnership Initiative, and I'll speak to some of the outcomes as the Jeans Fellow overall. So as you know, Jeans supervisors are rooted in history. They started during the Jim Crow era. And basically those were school supervisors who rallied resources and worked partnering with the community to make sure that the schools had the resources that they need, whether it were materials, food, whatever the students needed, families, and the school specifically. The Jeans Fellows served as like a liaison to make sure that that happened. So the Dudley Flood Center partnered with the Innovation Project to place Jeans Fellows throughout the state. So I am one of 8 Jeans Fellows across the state of North Carolina. So I'm super excited that Wake County partnered, was a part of that partnership, and you actually have a Jeans Fellow. So this has been most rewarding work for me this year. I started in November, as you know, so it's been hitting the ground running from there. So really excited about that. So the aim, just like in past times, was for the 8 of us to partner with the district to really look at the strategic plan and see what's the next needed thing. So that's kind of our motto, do the next needed thing, whatever that is. So here in Wake County with the new strategic plan, the primary focus has been on establishing some of the groundwork to organize community partnerships. So in order to do that, I've served on a number of committees to really just learn the lay of the land, get to know people who are the who's who in the community, what agencies are out there, and to also hear voice from parents, students, like what are the concerns and the issues. So I've definitely done a lot there, starting as early as November, working with the 100-day celebration, working with the report and on that team. I'll be working a lot with the task force that's to come. And as you'll see, this all of this is kind of like phases and different parts to the work. I've been involved with the Family and Community Engagement Committee, and I was able to help with the summit and serve as a session presenter. So again, just really trying to dive in and see what's what and be active with people already doing the work. I was a part of the forum, as Dr. Chavis just mentioned, and I've continued some work with the Counseling and Student Services Department because a lot of the needs they are aware of, and they'll definitely be able to maximize on the partnerships that we're able to secure. So I've kept that communication open because before I started as Jean's Fellow, I was serving in Behavioral Health Department here with Wake County. A few others, I've definitely been working closely with CELT, which was already established, the Community Equity Leadership Team. I'll be helping with some professional development coming up later as part of Office of Equity Affairs. And I won't go through the whole list, but as you can see, I've really been trying to dive in and see what's what. And I'm also really into writing. So synthesizing and summing up a lot of the reports has been a huge part of it, and this really helps to dive into the data and really focus on what are people saying, what are the key things that are surfacing so that we can be strategic in our approach. So we all know that community partnerships are beneficial. Research has shown that community partnerships can impact academics, which is the whole primary aim of education. But the main benefit is the enrichment opportunities, the added manpower, so you can maximize on those partnerships for tutoring, help with behavior support. So the list is never ending as to what the community can actually offer. So establishing and securing and strengthening the partnerships is definitely going to be key moving forward. We're realizing that it does require a village, definitely, to make the impact that we want to see. I was pleased to see that when looking at the research, it definitely aligns to our priorities. We have an emphasis on knowledge and skill, social emotional development, and student disposition and well-being, as well as our operational effectiveness. So community partnerships can definitely help us reach those priorities. With that said, as Jean's Fellow, we had to determine what's going to be our main deliverable. So what is going to be the focus of your project? And looking at the strat plan and all of the things under community engagement, we really felt the need to curate that list. So that was one of our desired outcomes, making sure that we had a centralized list of who our community partners are. To date, those have been handled mostly at the school level. Schools know who their partners are. They maximize on those. But we really wanted one centralized list, not just to establish the partnerships, but to even help with communication. So these are some of the outcomes that we're definitely working towards, opening up more communication with the partners to emphasize what our needs are and just to provide updates and celebrations, as well as thinking about how the goods and services can be distributed more equitably, realizing who's out there, who's offering what. We can be more strategic in saying, oh, this service is needed over here, or wow, we really need to expand or multiply this service because this group is really doing a great job. So the opportunities are definitely there, which is why we determined that curating this list was going to be key as a first phase. This definitely links to asset mapping research, which is the goal of just collecting the sites of connection, places of engagement, and avenues for social capital, realizing that the things that we need are out there. It's just a matter of getting it organized and maximizing on those. So the initiative is put yourself on the map. That's what we're asking our partners to do. So we're actually going to give you a handout that includes a QR code and the Bitly, which is a form that we're asking our partners to use to submit their profile. So this is kind of the next phase in this development. And so we've already launched it kind of with a little bit slower progress just to make sure there were no glitches with the technology, because all of this is definitely an electronic tool. And we thus far asked about 37 people to submit their profiles, and we've had 12 to respond, so I'm pretty excited about that. And that was just through an email blast. So I think with more communication, actually explaining it in forums will definitely be a huge part of marketing this. But the goal will be to get more people to submit their profiles. So if you're interested, you could take a look at the Bitly link or scan the QR code. That'll give you access to the form that we're asking them to complete. And as you can see, you've got a few copies. So one ask is that you kind of help us spread the word. Feel free to pass these out or just share them with some of the people that you may know. Yes.
Do you have this available as a PDF or electronic copy?
We do. Yes, we can definitely provide that. And then I'll also share a way they can just get it straight from our website as well. So you could just verbally direct them there too. So it is already on our website under the community tab. So as you can see, Community Partnership Mapping Initiative is listed as an option. So you could just direct them to the website and they can access it there if they don't have the QR code. And then once there, they'll be able to read a little bit more information about it as well as access the form. So this is what we're calling phase 1, just trying to get as many submissions as possible. Phase 2 will be launching the actual map. So not only are we curating this list like a spreadsheet or database, because we can access and filter and sort and search it that way, but it will also be featured on a map that we'll use internally. So this is not something that we're going to publicize to the community or that way, but basically it'll be an internal tool for all of Wake County staff to be able to use. So principals, social workers, counselors, as well as district level leaders will be able to see what resources are out there. As you can see on the screen, you'll be able to filter by what services are offered. So if you're specifically looking for resources for food or clothing, you can search that way. Target audience will be another way to search, like if it's a service or a program specifically for elementary students, then our people will be able to search that way. And you can even search by service area. So the current image on the screen also kind of gives a sneak peek as to what else will be featured. It'll give them the primary contact, email, phone number, best way to communicate. So a lot of information there, and then it will link them to that organization's website. So basically, we're just trying to get it all in one place. Another cool thing about it, obviously you can tell I'm excited, is that the organization can say, yes, we're accepting new clients or we're open to new partnerships, or they can say, well, no, not at this time. And we really thought through that because we wanted people to still include their profile, but then not feel like, well, I don't want to submit my profile because I may become overwhelmed. We want them to still submit their profile, even if they're not open to new partnerships at the time, so that they can still get the communication. So that's a key marketing point, that we want them to really realize this is a way for us to communicate with partners all in one messaging, and they can still be aware of what the district is doing. So they'll show up as red or green, so when we're searching, we'll know, oh, they're accepting or they're not. So we definitely thought through some ways to make this a great tool for our users. So this will be phase 2. Once we get more submissions, I'll be able to share this with Wake County staff members to be able to use it, hopefully at some leadership conference or an earlier principals meeting, and then with others thereafter. From there, we're calling this phase 3. We'll be able to communicate with partners. So just thinking about all the email topics that you might want to send, any updates or announcements / celebrations. We'll be able to send surveys, questionnaires, and get more feedback that way. We talked about a community engagement newsletter, so another way to broadcast our information. So we'll already have this list generated, and then just making them aware of meetings, sessions, and things that they can engage in, like the task force. We'll have this list to be able to recruit members for things like that. And then from there, we'll also be able to monitor and track progress. To what extent are we getting new partnerships? To what extent are partners growing and expanding their services due to more engagement? This has not been a one-man show. This has definitely been a team effort. I definitely have to give a huge shout out to the mapping folks. So we have a whole geospatial analytics department. I love saying that. And I've really worked a lot with them to basically not just have a list, but to also make it a mapping feature. So a lot of work went there. I've worked a lot with the communications department to update the website. And obviously my leaders have been coaching and supporting me along the way. And Counseling and Student Services has definitely been open to the partnership. They're excited about the tool to come. I was able to share it with social workers just to get some feedback since they work with community partners so much. So that was very rewarding. Are there any questions? I think that's
So
all.
many, I could tell. Thank you both. Dr. Eng, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
So in the utilization of this, are you using it internally, or are you using it with, the partners can also access this tool, or even beyond that? What do you envision?
So the aim is for Wake County employees to have access to it, so that we're not starting from scratch every time we're looking for a sponsor or support. So we didn't have a tool internally for that. From there, we'll see the need, we'll be able to access it. We could use it as a reference if we're linking a family with a specific agency, but we didn't want to make it public and then the organizations really become overwhelmed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I certainly, I know from the healthcare side, the social workers in healthcare, they all do these kind of, networking with what's the services are out there in the community and try to compile a list. And that's what they do. And so I'll certainly pass it along to my folks in the hospital and see if they have any additional input, for connections for you guys.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Caulfield, anything? No. Mr. Swanson? No. Ms. Rice?
I think you're amazing. I think
Sure,
the work
Henry.
that's been happening is great.
Yeah, and just thank you for all the work that you've put into this. I know that there's a lot more to do, and just even the idea that it might be premature to bring it to us, but bringing us all of this and the progress so far is really encouraging. It helps us better understand it. People ask us what the committee's doing, or even ask what community mapping means. This gives us a great way to describe it. I like that I can give them something that they can go and they can take some action while we're still putting this together, so thank you.
Yeah, I certainly echo the chair's points. And by putting it on the website, people are going to want to know what it means, and I think it's going to be important. I just looked at the site, the link with the questions as well, and I think that'll be the ongoing question is community members are going to want to know if they have access to it, and so I think it's going to be important that we also collectively help support that. This will be for internal use, so if schools are looking for, as you said, elementary tutoring, they can go to this. But for me, the biggest thing that this will give us the opportunity to do, and we saw this at Southeast Raleigh, is people saying, I've been trying to get into schools, but I don't have a way to advertise the work that we do. So this gives them a direct link into our database. So absolutely, thank you. And I have a million questions, but I promise I wouldn't ask because I know that you wanted to just give us the beginning. So I appreciate the work and the thoughtfulness that has gone into this, and I think it'll be a huge tool for the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then you'll be ready for the next need. And Ms. Hill is getting herself ready. Oh, and you have Mr. Battle joining you. I'd like to say I'm so glad you have a volunteer coordinator. I'd like to say I'm very glad that you have a volunteer coordinator. Nice to meet you, Mr. Battle.
I would like to say I am too. Good afternoon, board members. It is a pleasure to be in front of you again to talk volunteer this time. And as Madam Chair indicated, it is nice to have a volunteer coordinator who will be discussing that with you all. So one of the two of the big changes that have happened in our volunteer process
are, one, that we have a new volunteer management system, and two, that we have a district volunteer coordinator. And as Madam Chair knows, I am so happy for those things because they have made significant changes and improvements for us in our volunteer work. And it is exciting to be where we are today compared to where we were last year and a couple of times that we met and talked about volunteers here and there. My excitement over our district volunteer coordinator shows itself in me turning things over to him to talk to you about our volunteer processes. So Milton Battle is our district volunteer coordinator, and he will lead this discussion. I will jump in and answer any questions that may have, but this is my pleasure to turn that over.
I just have to say to the board that Ms. Hill managed every volunteer in the entire District of Wake County, in addition to all the other reasons you see her come before us. So that is my sense of gratitude, is when we talk about district capacity, I had no idea that we had no one to manage volunteers. And I kept sending all of these requests to fix the process, not knowing that Ms. Hill did that in 5,000 other things. So I personally am very excited to know that you have someone to help shoulder the burdens. So, Mr. Battle, you may already know that Ms. Johnson-Hosler always has ideas about volunteers, but it is my pleasure, and we are glad to have you join us.
And let me just thank the board for the resources,
Yes.
for a volunteer coordinator and for a new volunteer management system. It is fantastic, and I appreciate you all supporting that.
I mean, you told me you were literally using a Google Sheet yourself. So I think the board, again, we don't often know. We just assume there is a machine behind all of this, and there wasn't a machine behind our volunteer management work. So again, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Ms. Hill stated, I'm Milton Barrow. I serve as a district volunteer coordinator. Today we will cover some topics just to show you guys where we were at prior to the 23-24 school year as it relates to the volunteer program, where we currently are, and then what our roadmap future looks like for years to come. So prior to the 23-24 school year, we really had no true volunteer management system. We had a criminal background check system, but not a true volunteer management system. We used to have to do weekly uploads, which included taking 6 different Google spreadsheets and combining them into one mass list, and then using a data pig, which is a Excel extension that was created specifically for the volunteer upload. And that would allow us to be able to take data from all 6 spreadsheets to push it out into one spreadsheet and then across to 198 different schools, so each school could find their approved list and for it to be in alphabetical order.
Now y'all know why I talked.
So this process could only be done once a week, so we would do that weekly upload on Fridays. It was a Sunday thing before Kendra handed it off to me. I was able to get it down from a 6-hour time frame to about 2 to 3 hours, and I'm very tech savvy, so it still took a technological person 2 to 3 hours to get that done. Through the old system, our processing times were 3 to 6 weeks, so it would take 3 to 6 weeks for a volunteer to be approved. And then we had no way of really tracking volunteer numbers, volunteer data as it relates to that, because it would take an arm and a leg to go into the current background check system that we had to be able to just tell you how many current approved volunteers we do have, which we will talk about in the next couple of slides. And then we never had a true renewal process through our old volunteer, not even a volunteer system, but our old volunteer process. We never had a volunteer renewal process. So every year volunteers would just submit their criminal background check. And so when you have 38,000 people that are volunteering every year, all having to sign up to volunteer at one mass time, created that 3 to 4 month debt. 3 to 4 month approval time and backlog that we experienced in previous years. And of course, the main hassle was applicants could only apply to volunteer from their current school service. So you had to go to a Wake County school site to even apply to volunteer. So where we currently are at, thankfully, we now have a true state-of-the-art volunteer management system, one of which I believe is the best in the state. I know that the board always talks about being #1 in the country, so I think that this system is a great system. I've also had contacts from other districts who have reached out to see what we are using, so that has been a very, very positive thing there. Volunteers now have their own individual volunteer portal. Screenshot there just shows you kind of what it looks like on their side of things through their portal once they create their account. We have created also an internal volunteer tracking number sheet. We particularly use this sheet at the beginning of the school year so that Kendra and Dr. Matillo can keep a check on how many applications we're approving on a weekly basis, so that I'm back within 24 to 72 hours, with that 10% coming back within a week's time. So we have done a lot of collaboration with the communications department, Sarah Clark and Ms. Tug. We've done a lot of work doing a redesign of our district volunteer website. Whenever you guys have time to check that out, it's more extensive now, so we have more information about volunteering, our volunteer registration categories, along with our volunteer FAQs, frequently asked questions that volunteers may have. So that information is out there. We also have a listing of what it is to be a visitor versus a volunteer, so people always had that question. So that information is listed on our district website. Each school now has a designated volunteer coordinator that is designated by the principal, and they have a backup. So at any given time, 3 people at the school location can access their own volunteer portal that they can log in, and they can view their school's approved list through that system. And the volunteer coordinator also includes our new school, Wood Creek Elementary School. They already are set up in our volunteer management system, and that principal has already designated their school volunteer coordinator and backup to begin their volunteer work at their school community. Communication to applicants through all phases of the registration process is a part of this new system. So now, from the time that you create an account, whether you complete that account or for some reason get off of that account, you're getting a constant email from CRC, which is our program is My Volunteer powered by CRC. You get a constant email from us saying, hey, you did not complete your volunteer application. Please click here to return to your application. So communication through all phases. Volunteers are now being communicated when they're approved. So whenever they receive a disposition from our office, they receive an email. I was telling Kendra that's a big thing that I have been very happy to see this year, because now when volunteers call or schools call, I can say that, hey, you are approved. It was approved on this date, and it was sent out on this date, this time down to the 2nd. And so this volunteer portal here, once a person is approved, that verified status will update from pending to the date that the disposition was set. So it could be 4/13, and then the status would say pending. So the volunteer also receives an email of approval as well as their volunteer portal that they can log in at any time to check their status. We now have established a monthly chat with the coordinator that is with myself. A time and opportunity that I opened up on my schedule for our volunteer coordinators to raise concerns, ask questions, and for me to give them support, and for them to be able to receive any volunteer updates as it relates from the district level. We've had great success with that. At one time, we had as many as 102 school level volunteer coordinators on that call. So very productive meeting there. Also, kudos and shout out to Sarah Clark and the communications team again for the collaboration. We, to my knowledge, this year had our very first district-wide volunteer recognition from the district as a whole through National Volunteer Appreciation Week. That was April the 22nd through the 26th. And our communications team worked with pushing out those messages from the schools and pictures from our schools with the hashtag Thank WCPSS Volunteers. So kudos to that. We also have established our student volunteer process and procedures of what that looks like for all of our current Wake County students, non-Wake County students, and our students that are 18 and under and 18 and over. So that process is also listed on our district website. And finally, for this school year, we have had the pleasure of streamlining our yearly reactivation process, renewal process. So beginning July 1st to October the 1st, 2024, we have volunteer renewal period of time to where the volunteers that are currently approved will receive an email on July the 1st stating that they need to renew their volunteer status. And all that consists of is them logging into their volunteer portal, checking that they would like to continue volunteering, update their school information or any contact information, and clicking submit, and then they are already renewed for the 24-25 school year. That email will go out to them, as I stated, on July 1st. It also will be sent out on 30-day mark of September the 5th, and then the 5-day mark of September the 26th. And if they do not renew them during that window, they will be deactivated. We will do a mass deactivation at 10/1/24 at 11:59:59. Mass deactivation. And so once that takes place, our volunteers will have to go back through the background check process again and submit a new application. So these are just some things we've been out and about. Our volunteers have been working, doing some great things this year, and so this just highlights some of the activities. Top right-hand corner was at Powell Elementary that they partnered and had a company, the Watchman Group, come out during Volunteer Day. Their entire company, down to the CEO, came out. They registered and were approved, and then came out to volunteer. So kudos to them. So kind of our next steps here with the volunteer program. The My Volunteer program itself is always evolving, so more features are to be added, almost like Apple does with their updates. And so we are expecting this program to have a My Volunteer app, and so parents will be able to go to Google Play Store, Apple Play Store, and download the My Volunteer app. Also, volunteer hours will be able to be tracked, and so with that being said, school-level volunteer coordinators will be able to log into their account, almost like a sign-up genius, create that volunteer opportunity. Volunteers will be able to sign up for a slotted amount of time for that are approved, and they'll be able to do that. School users, we talked about that sign-up event. And then also, we will be establishing more training for our volunteer coordinators and our volunteers itself. And also, we are working on engaging our volunteers past the one time a year where we have 38,000 people to sign up to maybe volunteer just for one field trip or one field day activity, but really wanting to engage them through some unique volunteer opportunities that every school can utilize, from the eastern all the way to our southern area of school. And then also working on a volunteer training for volunteers to be able to know simple things on such as our mission statement, our volunteer roles and goals, what their volunteer roles and goals are, volunteer code of ethics and procedures, volunteer do's and don'ts, as well as basic housekeeping and safety and security things that I believe volunteers should know when they step into our building so that they're aware. The next slide here just shows you some data here. We have in the district 3 volunteer registration categories. One have been a parent and community member. Second, been a current WCPSS staff, and this does include our current substitute teachers and then our student volunteers. The biggest difference in our parent and community volunteers and our current staff still have to sign up to register to volunteer. They just don't go through the background check piece of things, so their background check has already been monitored through the employee process. So typically our employees receive an instant response. So Ms. Johnson-Hossel, you can apply now and get an approval within 5 minutes. So And so the volunteer numbers breakdown just show you, so as of April the 29th, we had approval of 37,213 parent and community volunteers, 1,225 current staff volunteers, non-student volunteers, and that brings that total to 38,438 approved volunteers as of April the 29th. That incomplete section there shows you the number of applicants that have not completed what they need to, so they've started the process and just did not finish. They also received those emails to finish. And so the pending applications, and you can see there, the ones that are in process, that's a huge number because we received over 43,000 applications to volunteer, and we currently have that number down to only 128 that are currently with our background check vendors that we're waiting to receive back. And so just to show you how that number increases daily, as of today, at about 12:45, that number of 38,438 has increased to 38,996 approved volunteers. So that's roughly about 554 volunteers that have been approved since 4/29/24. And so if you look at the value of volunteer time, 39,000, sorry about that, 39,000. And so if you look at the volunteer time, and if we were just to estimate a volunteers at least 2 hours a year, timesing that by what the North Carolina state value of volunteer time averages out to. So with that 38,000 number there, has been an estimated $2,432,926.16.
Wow.
And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I always give kudos whenever I present to Kendra, my senior director. Kudos to her, Dr. Martillo, my assistant superintendent, for allowing me to lead this work. I'm very excited, very passionate, and so I turn it back over to you. If you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Kudos to you, Ms. Caulfield.
I think this is wonderful, thank you. I did not realize that we did not have like a tracking and coordinator, and I know how much time that actually takes to put all that together, so it's wonderful. That's like almost like a one-stop shop, that you get all this information, and the fact that you ended that out with how much money that equates to, like what we save when volunteers come in and help us, it's a big number to see what you have there. I do have a question with the July 1st. You said that they have to apply to like re-up basically their application. Is that right?
Yeah, so they don't have to technically reapply. They'll just receive an email notification saying that they will have to renew their volunteer application should they choose to for the 24-25 school year. They will also receive communication prior to July 1st. Our first mode of communication will come out from the district. I've been working with Allison Tux and her team. They have an extensive communication plan outlined, so we will be pushing out information from the district through the principal's weekly message, the community message, the district's website about the renewal process and that it is coming up. So our community will be notified from the district first, and then that official email will come from to all of our approved volunteers on that July 1st date.
Okay, and then you said that they don't have to update all their information. So how does that technically work with like backgrounds, if we're not doing another background check, if anything is updated in that prior year?
That the background is being routinely checked. Okay. That's an ongoing check. And so all we really will need from them is, do you want to continue? Yes or no? And has anything changed in your information? And that will pretty much be it to keep that process moving along.
Okay. And where do they have on the website, since you mentioned that it's like kind of like a Sign Up Genius, where is that on the website that they can go in their particular school or community to go and sign up?
So the website itself has links on it for the volunteer sign up. So they actually can just sign up directly from the website.
Right.
And they have their own portal. Are you talking about activities in the school?
Well, if I were to go on to our website, because it's not always very clear, so if I were to direct somebody to go, here's where you could go sign up for a volunteer, under what category is it?
So it's under community, or you can direct them to wcpss.net/volunteers, and that will take them to the direct site. or wcpss.net via the community tab and then via the volunteer tab.
Okay.
And on that tab, we have a place for volunteer registration where they can begin their registration. We have resources, and then we have a place for My Volunteer Login. So if you click there, you can go to your own portal and log in for yourself. And Milton also created QR codes for the schools to use when their folks come in to the school. Let's say they're having their initial, orientation night or whatever it is at the school. They have a QR code that they can just click on to use to go into the.
I know the schools are happy.
Yes.
And some schools have even used that QR code and created, their PTA has purchased yard signs, so they stick those up in the carpool so parents can sit in the car and snap a picture, and it takes them straight there to begin the volunteer process.
So
Now you're navigating the website.
you may have just said this, but I just want to double check. It's
I set myself up.
CPSS.net/volunteer. So /volunteer gets you straight to the volunteer page.
And if you go to the main Wake County website, I just tested and search by volunteer.
Me too.
The first page, that's
Susan and I are testing too.
hopefully it's easy for the community to get to.
It actually was. I mean, it literally, I just typed in volunteer and it populated pretty simply. Sorry. So you know this concept?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Dr. A. Bennett.
This is very exciting. First question is, once the person's enrolled, will we be able to inform those individuals of additional volunteer opportunities, like a notification of future opportunities?
So that's one of the things that Milton mentioned is something that the system is building out,
Okay.
that the individual school volunteer coordinators will be able to add volunteer opportunities into the system, and the system will actually, as it builds out, permit us to communicate to volunteers through the system itself. But so yes, that is the plan. That's where we're going.
Kind of localized to a certain area, so it's not like so overwhelming in terms of the reach, right? The other thing that I was thinking is, is there going to be kind of a celebratory type of a thing that we can recognize key folks?
So one of the things in the system that will be built into the system is tracking of volunteer hours. And so Milton will be able to identify our top volunteers, and each school will be able to identify their top volunteers. And our plan is to have volunteer recognition times and things like that. So we are so excited about the opportunities in the system, and it is still building up to some of those things, but the framework is there, and we hope to have those additional things in the system showing hopefully in this next year.
That's awesome.
Ms. Rice.
I think this is fantastic, being a parent who's been in the school system for, I don't know, my oldest kid is 30, so how about that? This is nice to see. I have a question. We may have to table it and come later. I saw, one of the things that I remember from our community engagement from Southeast Raleigh, families asked, hey, we want to volunteer, but there are some barriers around volunteering. So I think that this system that we have is like really, really great to have a wonderful turnaround time. So my question is, I saw that we had 145 people ineligible. And again, this may be another time, it might be policy committee, I don't know. But what do we do, or what are the criteria, so families will know what is the criteria, even within my background, for me to actually be approved to be a volunteer? Because we have a lot of families with different situations and circumstances, so that's one of the things I don't know, and that's a question that I know was asked at our forum, and there was also a question that was brought up when we had our Southeast Raleigh forum last year, was we want to be in the schools, we want to volunteer, but we have families, we have this huge thing within our county, within our state, around reentry. Families want to have meaningful roles in their children's lives. And I know that we have to have some parameters around safety, but what are we doing to make sure that it's equitable for families who are socially disenfranchised in different ways? And how are we helping to support those families have meaningful roles through volunteering with their children in our schools? I don't know if we can answer that yet.
I mean, it's a question I've talked to Dr. Matillo about a million times, so, and I'm sure Ms. Hill can answer the question too. But I did say to the chair, those are all the things, now that we finally have a system that are coupled, that
Perfect.
that I do think is a larger conversation that the board has to have. Because there are things like, I mean, the examples like, hey, this person had a marijuana charge at 18. They're 40. Their kid is in our school. And I just have traditionally picked up the phone and called staff. But yes, I think you're right. We have to put some parameters so that we are creating space for families to be in our schools.
Right.
Yeah, completely agree.
So can we set some SMART goals around that coming back, because we're going in 24-25 school year? We want part of the work around student achievement in District 4 is one of the things that Ms. Luton created for us with District 4 and offering to other board members. It's a simple flyer that says you are a great parent, and giving them 3 ways of support, reminding them to, make sure you log into your child's school website and
Check your child's email should be on there. That's on I have a flyer too. Check your child's email.
Oh, okay, but yeah,
Add that to you.
and it has
That's where teachers
and
respond.
Power
Just don't check the
School
email.
to check that. It also reminds parents to update their current information, phone numbers at the school, and then the third is say, know who your school board member is. And so we want to encourage families to be a part of what we have going on, and we just want to help take the load off teachers for having to help students, and we know that works best, and data shows us that a parent is involved, you're going to have better outcomes with our children. So we want to get as many parents involved with their own child's learning as possible.
I'm going to let Ms. Hill speak. She's the winner. Or Dr. Taylor. Dr. Taylor, were you going to speak?
No, I think she had a question answered. Just
I was going to say, we certainly can pull that information together if the board wants us to come back and talk about, what sorts of standards that we look at and some of the parameters. We do try to take, acknowledge and recognize that there are things that happen earlier in life. We look at individual circumstances. Everything that we do is individualized when we review these matters, and looking at that, we try to gather as much information as we can from the applicant to make those determinations. One of the things I think it's important to know, and this is a general sort of oversight of our standards, is that we don't have volunteers at different levels. We have one volunteer level, and so when you are approved to do it all, and so that makes it important for us to have good standards in place that we can feel good about. Whoever gets that opportunity can be the person who's in the classroom and also on the field trip overnight and things like that. So, but we certainly can bring that back at a time that makes sense to discuss that. And I appreciate Board Member Rice about the information and making sure that we are equitable in terms of how we're looking at these things and reflecting what the community needs as well. So we certainly will bring that back for review.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I would also tell board members to tell parents to still complete it. Because half the time when early in my career, I call AJ, he'd be like, they're not in our system. So people would have fears that they were expressing to me that they had never even tried to volunteer because of their own background. So I think it also is important for us to tell people, submit it. This is an individualized process. We now have Mr. Battle. Someone will follow up with you. So I just want to caveat that, because I found a lot of times people had actually not even started our process.
So just a couple of things. One, we certainly do want to have parents that know what's in their background and explain the difference between visiting a school to see your child versus volunteering. There's going to be some different levels to that. But certainly helping them to understand what you can do to remove something from their background so they can volunteer. Second thing, I haven't, Mr. Swanson and I have already gone on and signed up and
I think we all
gotten into
did.
the system. But the real thing I want to say is this is what I call a level up opportunity.
It is.
And so we had a real problem with volunteers in terms of what the backlog was, how people complain, and now we see a process that has not only eliminated that, but has actually elevated us to a point. So I applaud you all for this work, but this is what we're talking about, and this is another opportunity to talk about transparency for parents and how we address the problem that they brought to us.
We leveled up for you. Thank you, Dr. Matillo and Ms. Hill. Did you have something? We have a few minutes. We got. I see you all. We can.
I didn't want to make discussion when it wasn't.
Okay.
But,
Well, now that it's coming back. So.
yeah, just some of the things that we've identified, right? Like, were you reporting the number of applications started but not completed? Do we know why it wasn't completed? Was there an obstacle? You know, sometimes you might have families that you don't have a permanent residence, and so if it's requiring an address to proceed, maybe that's a barrier that stops them. Or there could be just like a lot of individual circumstances as you've addressed. And just when this comes back, it'd be nice to hear what feedback you've gotten and ways you've made the system, more inclusive.
I think, Mr. Hershey, one of the main things that some people have mentioned that's in that pending status is where they don't realize it's technically a two-step process to where you create your account, but then you also receive, the second part of that is receiving that secure link via your email where you actually submit your background check information.
There you go.
We have actually sent out emails to folks in the incomplete to say, hey, we know that you've been incomplete. Milton did that to send out to the incomplete list of folks to say, choose a school, because some of it is that they just didn't choose a school.
I tried to skip that. It wouldn't let me.
Right, so choose a school, whatever it is, but to encourage folks to go ahead and complete that process. So we have done that where we're able to.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. Dr. Warren Lawrence and Dr. Burton. Ms. Hill, I hope you feel excited too. I can see you're smiling. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this time with you today. My name is Dr. Shanika Moore Lawrence, and we are here to talk about the Family and Community Engagement Summit. And when I say we, I really say Dr. Kimberly Burton. I just want to give her kudos and accolades for orchestrating the first ever district-wide Family and Community Engagement Summit. I know all the hard work that she put into that and the hard work as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Burton.
Thank you, Dr. Moore Lawrence. And good afternoon, board and superintendent and staff. It is my pleasure to bring you an update this afternoon from the first ever WCPSS Family and Community Engagement Summit that was held at Athens Drive High School on April 27th. I was here recently sharing with you about that event, and so I'm here today just to provide an update on how things went, to share with you a little bit of the feedback that we've been able to unpack thus far from that first event. So I will just, as a reminder, share that we do have a Family and Community Engagement Committee that was responsible for heading this event and planning this event. The committee is about 30 or so members, and it is a diverse group of folks that include parents, staff from schools, central service members, as well as community partners. So we're very pleased that we have a variety of voices that help to lead this work and to put this together. This work was grounded in our strategic plan Goal 6, Parent and Family Experience, Aims 6, 7, and 12. It was very important to the committee to have an event that for the first time brought school staff, families, and community agencies and leaders under one roof to engage in learning together. It was also important to the committee to ground ourselves in research and evidence around what effective and evidence-based practices around family engagement work. before we can do better, we must know better. And so we really engaged in a full day, was at the half day of learning around effective strategies. We had more than about 35 breakout sessions. We had community agencies on hand to partner in that work. And it really was a Saturday well spent. So we had a ball at Athens Drive on April 27th. Just to tell you a little bit about, if we measure the success of that event, we had over 44 school teams registered. It was an ask of the committee that our school teams included at least one parent, at least one community member, as well as school staff on those teams, so we could filter in and build in the sense of community, so that schools would learn and engage along with a parent and a community member to build that community. Registered teams also have already received their copy of Case Studies to Engage Every Family, which is a text that was written by keynote speakers Steve and Margaret Constantino. Those have already been sent to schools. They've been tweeting out about them, so hopefully you've seen some of those tweets. And I have already sent those out to board members and district staff as well, leadership as well, so hopefully you guys have received your copies of that text as well. If you have not gotten it,
Melissa has them upstairs. They are
She
okay.
has them upstairs.
All right. And so it was important to our community to make sure that we shared that text with you as well, so that you were aware of the research that our schools are continuing to engage in. The other rationale around sharing this text with school teams after the event was to send the message that the summit was not a one-shot deal. It was not a one and done. Learning will and should continue. The definition of high-quality professional learning means that it happens more than once. And so we cannot send the message that we learned all there is to know around effective strategies around family and community engagement in one day. And so the idea is in the fall, we hope to engage the school teams, everyone that was registered and participated, to engage again in the fall around this work, and this text will be useful in guiding that work. If you're curious as to how we might measure success, for the first event, the first time in sharing this opportunity, we had a total registration of school-based staff, open family staff registering of over 500 folks registered. In addition to folks that were registered, we were welcomed with overwhelming support by many of you in this room.
That's my pink jacket.
And so, yes.
Ms. Burton had on black, red, and white.
And so we are grateful to that overwhelming support, again, by many of you in this room and district staff. And I have to give kudos to even our 35 student volunteers who were absolutely precious, walking around, leading folks to their breakout sessions, helping people find restrooms. They just did a phenomenal job. And to the 27 community resource groups. And so all that I've heard today leading up to my time sitting at this table with you talked about how to know who these community partners are, where they are in our community. And for the first time, we brought everybody together to do that. So it really was a phenomenal experience. And over 62 presenters who gave up a half a day of their Saturday to build the capacity of learning for schools, our families, and our communities. So again, kudos to everyone that helped to make this event a success. Now, feedback. What did people say? I'm saying it was a great Saturday and a great way to spend your time. But I want you to see what we pulled just from Twitter posts from the day and social media. What did other people have to say?
Got to love Miss Walker. They ate and left no crumbs.
No crumbs, she says.
No crumbs. That's a good one.
I saved this one for
Yeah, that is
last
good.
because I thought it was important for the board to see and hear that there are folks who are excited to be in a district that is prioritizing this work. And so, as the leader of this work, I was proud on this day. And I hope that we are able to continue efforts that bring it all together. Everything we've talked about today was brought together and symbolized on that day, and I hope that this was the first of many more events just like that one. And so, thank you so much for
Kudos
all
to
of
you
the
all.
support.
It was a huge undertaking. And to Dr. Taylor's point, it was an amazing level up for the district. We've never done something like this, and so every single person that was there was actively engaged. You're right. Our students were amazing. We were trying to talk in the hallway. They were like, "Do you need to know where your session is?" I think they asked us like 3 times, like, "Excuse me, you still seem to be standing in the same place."
They were getting verbal and written instructions. On
They
the
followed
test.
those instructions. So well done. I mean,
thank you.
I know that this was not an easy undertaking, so thank you to everyone who gave their time, energy, and talent to put this together. And we have a few of our people that we always, like, as board members, we're like watching the audience, and I have to tell you, the Constantinos were hilarious and great, and I kept trying to check the audience, and regardless of who people were, what background they came from, they seem to be very engaged, and I think that is not easy to pull off. So I think I'm saying that to you because it's not in your comments, but you should know choosing a keynote speaker to open the day is often one of the hardest things because it sets the tone, and it really did set the tone because everybody in that room was engaged in some way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well done. Thank you. Mr. Swanson.
I was just going to echo that as well. I think Ms. Johnson and I always sit to each other in events and do a lot of sidebars, and so we had a lot of great ideas. And it was even insightful for board members to see how we play a role into this culture as well. So I think the keynote, to Ms. Johnson-Houser's point, the keynote was not just for the folks on staff, but it was for everyone. And I look forward to next year's or the year after that. So I'm just tasking you all with the great work ahead. So thank you.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend, but I hear great things about it, and I think the theme today is the road show, right?
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps next time we can do it out east or southwest, some other area that they may even have different community partners that maybe want to participate in those areas. So I think it's a good idea to kind of move things around.
Thank you.
I was impressed as I was driving in on 2 wheels how many people were there that early and on time on a Saturday morning. So, Dr. Taylor?
I mean, I'll just say we know how great it was, and I was certainly glad to be there and be a part. I was there early. I was in the truck. But again, this is the kind of work that I think shows to our public that we are serious about engaging. I can't say enough about the work, and I know that somebody even decided to forego sorority initiation in order to be there.
Yes, I did that.
Yes, I mean, I gave her a tad shout out when I said I want to be there. Okay.
But absolutely great.
It really was. I can't. And also, Sarah just walked out, but Lisa, kudos to comms, because you all can't turn it off as we level up. So make sure your team knows that we've recognized that they are absolutely always in the background to make sure that we're elevating all the great work. I was trying to say it before Sarah jetted out, but make sure your team knows, we know that nothing in this district is happening without comms elevating it, so thank you, and thank your team. and they were there.
I'll listen to and share name. I'm just going to give it back for the community engagement forum because I wasn't able to be there, but I've heard all the incredible things about it.
I just want to say thank you for putting all that together. I know it coordinates, there's a lot to coordinate all of that, but I think it also just goes to show if you've got that many people attending an event like this on a Saturday morning between soccer and baseball and all the things that can be going on a Saturday, the community wants to be there and want to be involved. So I think this is an awesome first step for us to go in that direction, to reach everybody out there. They see what's going on, they get engaged. That's how we get the partnerships, because then they feel like they're part of it and they're doing it with us. So I think it's wonderful. I can't wait to go to the next one.
Thank you, Ms. Caulfield. And I think you and Dr. Eaton both tied it together, and I want to thank all of our staff who came to present to us today. But I do think the real tie here is not only are we in our schools and moving this across the county, but we are listening to what our constituents are saying. And it is absolutely, I'll speak for the chair and he can speak for himself, it is absolutely our goal that we be not just the only, but the first and best choice. And that includes 70% of our community who do not have children, see themselves reflected in our district, and hopefully community engagement, our new volunteer process, which I have been approved already. Sitting here, luckily they already have a background check on me, so. But I think that those are things that make us accessible to the district, to your point, Ms. Caulfield. And so please continue to share this in your district with your community members and your neighbors. As Dr. Burton said, this was not a one-shot deal only. And so we are going to be committed to that. And no matter where I am next time, please, I will pass the hat for, as I look at Dr. Alford over there, I will pass the hat for coffee. But thank you all so much. And thank you all for waiting till the end. Chair, you want to say anything?
Only just, the Community Engagement Summit really was wonderful, and I really appreciate all the work everybody put into that. I got wonderful feedback from everyone who participated. It's one of those things you kind of wonder, why haven't we done something like that before? It was an ambitious scale, but it was great to see you all pull it off. So, very, very good feedback from the community, and we're really pleased. So thank you all.
Thank you all so much, and keep up the great work, and know that we are completely supportive, and we appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for us to adjourn this committee so we can switch over for the next.
Move to adjourn.
She's got it. All in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you all, and we'll do the board seat shuffle.
There you go. All right, thank you.